Picture this, a shiny pearlescent pink Escalade, the kind that screams, "I own this zip code," barreling straight through your backyard fence at dawn like it's auditioning for a demolition derby. The driver doesn't even tap the brakes. She just honks once, flips her perfectly blown-out blonde hair, and keeps rolling like your property line is a suggestion written in invisible ink. That was the exact moment I, Ethan Brooks, realized the so-called peaceful suburb of Harmony Grove wasn't ruled by common sense. It was ruled by Karen Langley, freshly crowned president of our Homeowners Association and apparently allergic to the word no. I'd moved here after 22 years in the Army, looking for nothing more dramatic than morning coffee on the porch and the quiet hum of sprinklers. My late wife Sarah had loved this place. The way the oak trees framed the house, the little access lane that ran behind our garage, a private strip of land clearly marked on the deed. We'd planted her memorial garden there. Heirloom roses, a tiny koi pond, and 3 award-winning hens that laid the most ridiculous blue eggs you've ever seen. The lane itself? Mine. Posted with signs the size of billboards. Private property. No trespassing. Violators will be towed. I figured that was enough. I was wrong. Karen had barely warmed the HOA president's chair when her daily parade started. Every morning at 7:15 sharp, that ridiculous pink tank would cut through my lane to avoid the speed bumps on Maple Drive. First time I waved her down politely, she slowed just enough to flash a pageant smile and called out, "Oh, Ethan, sweetie, the board voted last week that shared access improves community flow. Don't be difficult." Shared? My deed said otherwise. But Karen had that special talent, turning no into "you're the problem." I tried everything the reasonable man is supposed to try. Bigger signs. Certified letters. I even showed up at the monthly HOA meeting, the one where they spent 45 minutes debating whether beige or off-beige was the correct shade for porch swings. When my turn came, I laid out the facts, calm as a church deacon. Karen leaned into the microphone like she was addressing the UN. "Neighbors, Mr. Brooks here seems to think his little lane is more important than neighborhood harmony. Perhaps if he'd joined the association instead of isolating himself, he'd understand progress." The room tittered. Someone whispered, "Hermit," loud enough for me to hear. I sat back down, cheeks burning, already labeled the antisocial veteran who didn't play nice with the HOA queen. The incursions got creative after that. A Starbucks cup tossed exactly where my roses met the lane. Her bass thumping so hard my koi scattered every time she passed. Once she accidentally blocked the lane for 20 minutes while she took a call, engine running, smiling at me through the tinted glass like we were in on the same joke. David from 3 houses down pulled me aside at the mailbox one afternoon. "She's on a power trip, Ethan. Word is Summit Homes slipped her a sweet deal on that pink monstrosity after the board fast-tracked their ugly townhouse project. You're just collateral damage." I nodded, said nothing. But I started keeping a log. Timestamps. Photos. Because polite was clearly not the language Karen spoke. Then came the rain. Not a polite drizzle, the kind that turns everything to soup and makes smart drivers take the long way. I woke to the sound of tires spinning, metal groaning, and the unmistakable scream of my hens. By the time I reached the lane, Karen's Escalade had carved a 6-foot trench through Sarah's memorial garden. Rose bushes flattened. The koi pond cracked open, silver bodies flopping in the mud. And my 3 prize hens, Sarah's pride and joy, lay still under the rear tire. Karen was already climbing out, white capris now the color of regret, one heel snapped. She didn't even look at the destruction. She looked at me. "This is your fault for not maintaining proper drainage. I could sue you for damaging my vehicle." I stood there in the pouring rain, coffee mug still in my hand, and felt something inside me click into place. Not rage. Something colder. Something patient. "Morning, Karen," I said, voice steady. "Looks like your shortcut just became a very expensive lesson in reading signs." She sputtered something about lawyers and community standards, but I was already walking back to the house. Because at that moment, I knew words weren't going to fix this. Consequences were. I called Marcus at dawn the next day, old Army buddy who now ran a landscaping outfit. "Need a drainage improvement," I told him. Very specific location. Very legal. Very deep. He didn't ask twice. By midnight, we were out there under a moonless sky, his excavator whispering through the soft earth just inside my fence line. For hours later, we had a perfect car-swallowing trench, camouflaged with loose sod and a thin layer of gravel. We lined it just enough that anyone paying attention would see the new, private property, deep drainage work ahead, signs I'd bolted to steel posts. Anyone not paying attention? Well, that was the point. I barely slept. Just sat on the porch with my thermos, waiting for the symphony I knew was coming. At 7:14, the familiar growl of that pink engine sliced through the quiet. I didn't move. I let the tires hit the gravel, let the momentum carry her forward, let the world hold its breath for half a second. Then came the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. A wet, metallic crunch followed by a high-pitched shriek that could have shattered glass. The Escalade's front end dropped like a stone. Rear wheels spun uselessly, flinging mud in perfect arcs. Karen's door flew open and she half fell, half climbed out, designer blouse now a Jackson Pollock of brown. I walked over slowly, phone already recording. "Morning, Karen. Seems the topography shifted overnight. Funny how that happens when you ignore clear signage on private property." Her face went from shock to supernova. "You maniac. You dug a trap. I'll have you arrested. The HOA will destroy you." I just panned the camera across the brand new signs, the clearly marked boundary, and her buried pink status symbol. "Actually, Karen, this is all on my deed. Documented. Timestamped. And you're giving the neighbors quite the show." By then, David was leaning over his fence, phone up. Mrs. Patel from across the street had her window open. Even little Timmy next door was filming from behind his mom's SUV. The entire block was suddenly very interested in HOA drama. She tried to storm toward me, one heel sinking to the ankle. "Turn that off. This is harassment." I smiled for the first time in months. "Public sidewalks over there, Karen. You're currently standing in my garden." Again, I hooked the tow chain to my old John Deere, fired it up, and dragged that pink embarrassment across the pasture to the compost heap. Left it listing at a sad 45-degree angle right next to last week's kitchen scraps. "Safer here," I called back. Wouldn't want any more unexpected topography incidents on my actual lane. The video hit the neighborhood Facebook group before her tow truck even arrived. Title: When HOA Karen Ignores Private Property Signs, a Documentary. 2,000 views by lunchtime. Comments poured in, some laughing, some finally brave enough to admit they'd been fined for offensive holiday lights, while Karen's pink tank got a free pass. But Karen wasn't the type to slink away quietly. Oh no. She regrouped with the speed of a woman who'd built her entire identity on control. The certified letter arrived 3 days later from the most expensive law firm in the county. Malicious construction of a hazard, intentional property damage, emotional distress to our client in her official capacity as HOA president. They wanted the trench filled, a public apology, and enough money to make my pension cry. I forwarded it to my lawyer, MS. Rivera, a no-nonsense woman who'd once made an entire HOA board cry in mediation. Her reply letter was a masterpiece of polite savagery. Attached, the deed, the video, time-stamped photos of the destroyed garden, and a counter-demand for every rose bush, every koi, and every hen. Plus punitive damages for repeated trespass. That's when the flyers started appearing. Anonymous, of course. Warning: dangerous hazards on Brooks property. Unstable veteran creating traps. Protect your children. Complete with a blurry photo of the trench that made it look like a war zone. Karen's little fan club in the HOA group chat began calling me that angry recluse. I could feel the whispers at the mailbox, the sudden silence when I walked into the community center. But here's the thing about patience. It's a weapon. I spent the next week building a simple website. No screaming. Just facts. The deed. The signs. The video. Side-by-side photos of Sarah's garden before and after. And a polite note. For those interested in the truth rather than rumors. The neighborhood forum exploded. People who'd been quietly terrified of Karen's fines suddenly found their voices. "She's been doing this to all of us," one mom posted. "My kid's basketball hoop was non-compliant last month, but her pink SUV gets to destroy private property?" Marcus forwarded me screenshots from the HOA board chat, Karen frantically trying to delete threads. Too late. The tide had turned. Then came the monthly meeting. I didn't even have to attend. MS. Rivera sat in the back row with a stack of printed evidence. When the agenda reached new business, the retired librarian who'd lived here 30 years stood up. Madam President, perhaps you could explain the sudden landscaping contract awarded to Summit Homes, the same company that gifted you that very colorful vehicle, right after they received their zoning variance? The room went dead silent. Karen's smile froze. Someone projected my website onto the wall. The video played on loop. By the time the vote of no confidence was called, Karen's face had gone the exact shade of her buried SUV. She grabbed her designer bag and stormed out, heels clicking like tiny gunshots. The door slam echoed like the final period on a very long sentence. 2 weeks later, the for sale sign went up on her perfect lawn. The county investigation into Summit Homes' cozy relationship with the former HOA president started the same day. Deputy Ramirez stopped by my porch with a six-pack and a grin. Between us, Ethan, that ditch of yours uncovered more than just mud. I raised my coffee in salute. The new neighbors who bought Karen's house? Normal people who actually waved and asked before borrowing tools. The HOA rewrote half its bylaws after the audit. No more beige police. No more pink tanks treating private lanes like public highways. I still sit on the porch every morning. The memorial garden is replanted, stronger roses this time. The koi are back, flashing silver in the repaired pond. The hens' grandchildren peck happily behind new reinforced fencing. And every once in a while, when the wind is right, I swear I can hear Sarah laughing at the whole ridiculous saga. So here's the question I keep turning over in my mind, and now I'm turning it over to you. When the people in power break every rule they're supposed to enforce, is quietly digging one perfect, legal hole really the crazy thing, or is letting them keep driving over everyone else the real insanity? Who was actually in the wrong here? The veteran protecting his late wife's memory, or the HOA Karen who thought her title came with a free pass to trample anyone who said no? Drop your verdict in the comments. I'm genuinely curious which side of the fence you'd stand on if it was your garden under those tires. The weeks after Karen's dramatic exit felt like the neighborhood had finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. The new HOA board, led by the same retired librarian who dropped the zoning bomb, moved fast. They repealed the ridiculous fines for non-compliant holiday decorations and actually listened when residents complained about the Summit Homes condos blocking everyone's sunset views. David started a monthly cookout on the common green. Mrs. Patel brought her famous samosas. For the first time since I'd moved in, Harmony Grove felt like a community instead of a police state with better landscaping. But Karen wasn't finished trying to rewrite history. A week after the for sale sign went up, an unmarked envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address, but the heavy cream paper and perfect cursive gave her away. Inside was a single typed page. Recent events have been stressful. I wish to relocate quietly for family reasons. Let us put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us. No apology for the hens. No mention of Sarah's destroyed garden. Just the scent of surrender wrapped in corporate speak. I filed it next to the legal papers and poured myself a celebratory bourbon. Some people never learn, they just relocate the problem. The official county letter arrived shortly after. My property boundaries were confirmed exactly as I'd stated. All complaints filed by MS. Karen Langley were dismissed with prejudice. Deputy Ramirez even joked that my drainage improvement had become required reading for new deputies on how not to handle neighbor disputes. Marcus showed up one Saturday with a hand-carved wooden sign for the barn. Ethan's stand, peace through preparedness, and one hell of a ditch. We hung it right next to my tools, and every time I see it I smile. The real victory, though, was quieter. The new family who bought Karen's house, Michael and Sarah. Yes, same name as my wife, small world. Brought over a fresh apple pie their first weekend. We heard you're the guy who finally stood up to the HOA Karen. Michael laughed. We just wanted to say thanks. Our kids can finally ride bikes without worrying about beige police tickets. Their little girl, maybe 8 years old, tugged my sleeve and asked if she could see the famous trench. I showed her where it used to be, now a gentle berm with wildflowers, and told her the short version. Sometimes the loudest people aren't the ones who are right. They're just the ones with the biggest car. Life settled into the rhythm I'd come here for. Mornings with coffee and the paper. Afternoons tinkering in the workshop. Evenings watching the koi circle lazily while the hens argued over bugs. The pink Escalade was long gone. Repossessed, rumor had it, after the Summit Homes investigation froze Karen's accounts. Last I heard, she'd moved 2 states away to a gated community with even stricter rules. I hope they have very deep drainage there. But every once in a while, when I drive past the old Langley house and see normal kids playing in the yard, I remember the look on Karen's face the moment that pink tank dropped into the mud. Not just shock, not just rage. The sudden, horrifying realization that the rules she'd weaponized against everyone else finally applied to her too. And in that split second, the queen of the HOA became just another driver who'd ignored the signs. The neighborhood is quieter now. The rules make sense. The power is balanced. And my private lane? Still private. Still posted. Still mine. Some fences are made of wood and wire. Others are made of patience, evidence, and one perfectly timed ditch. I've learned that true peace isn't given. Sometimes you really do have to dig for it. And yet, even with the for sale sign gone and new neighbors settled, the story didn't quite end when Karen drove away for the last time. Because the real lesson, the one that still keeps me up some nights with a half smile, had nothing to do with pink SUVs or muddy trenches. It was about how quickly a group of reasonable people can hand their power to one unreasonable person, then act shocked when she starts eating the village. I started noticing it in small ways. The way Mrs. Patel now double-checks the HOA newsletter before planting anything. The way David pauses before putting out his 4th of July flag, just to make sure the new board won't call it non-compliant. Even the librarian who led the revolt admits she still feels the ghost of Karen's glare when she speaks up at meetings. Power leaves fingerprints, even after the tyrant is gone. One crisp fall afternoon, Marcus and I were sitting on the porch watching the leaves turn when a shiny new white SUV pulled up. Same model as Karen's old tank, just different color. The driver was a young couple I didn't recognize. They introduced themselves as the new owners of the lot behind mine. We heard the story, the husband said, grinning. Wanted to come by and personally promise we'll never use your lane as a shortcut. Pink SUVs give us the creeps now too. We laughed, shook hands, and I sent them home with a dozen fresh blue eggs. Small acts of trust rebuilding what one woman had spent years tearing down. But the internet never forgets. My video, now titled, HOA Karen's Pink SUV Gets Exactly What It Deserved, hit 500,000 views across neighborhood drama channels. Comments from all over the country poured in. This happened to my mom in Florida. Our HOA Karen fined me for my American flag, sending this to the board chat right now. Strangers started tagging their own entitled neighbors. Hashtags trended. HOA Karen became shorthand for any petty tyrant in a position of minor power. I even got a polite email from a documentary producer asking if I'd consider telling the full story on camera. I politely declined. Some victories taste better when they stay local. Still, every morning when I walk out to check the hens, I pause at the edge of the lane. The berm is covered in wildflowers now, but I can still see the exact spot where that pink behemoth dropped like a stone. I remember Karen's face, makeup running, hair ruined, designer shoes ruined, realizing for the first time that the world didn't actually revolve around her title. And I remember my own reflection in the tractor window, not some raging vigilante, just a tired man who'd finally decided enough was enough. The chickens cluck happily. The roses bloom brighter than ever. Sarah's koi circle in their repaired pond like nothing ever happened. And somewhere 2 states away, I hope Karen Langley is learning what it feels like to be the one told no by people who actually mean it. So I'll leave you with the same question that started this whole mess and still hasn't been answered to my satisfaction. When the people who make the rules are the ones who break them the hardest, is the real crime digging a ditch to protect what's yours or standing by silently while they drive over everything you love? Was I the villain for refusing to be walked on, or was the entire system the villain for letting one Karen turn a homeowners association into her personal kingdom? Tell me in the comments, who really crossed the line first? Because from where I sit on this quiet porch, watching the sunrise paint my healed garden gold, the answer feels pretty clear. But I'm still curious what you think.